Good morning, peace and blessings, everybody. It's your boy Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless, and I'm back with another video. I hope everybody enjoying their Friday and ready for the weekend. Turn up, turn up, turn up. But yeah, man, as the title says, my reaction to Trump's latest interview on CNBC, and this is, one of those type of situations where CNBC is a leftist Democratic platform, and Trump just going on these platforms, doing these interviews with these leftist media platforms. It's like he always never been to shy away from stepping in the lion's den, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So those interviews are always fun to react to. See how he handle his. He's never been one to duck no smoke, and I respect that about him. And yeah, man, before we get into it, I don't want to waste too much time because the interview was kind of lengthy, and we want to get to all of that. But before we do that, we got a couple things that we have to get to. So this should be a good show, First and foremost, you know how we do with the copyright disclaimer, right? Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Disclaimer Act of 1976, allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right, so we got that out the way. But yeah, man, like I said, man, we got the interview with CNBC. But before we get to that, I want to touch on something else that was sent to me by, shout out to Brother Muse Black. Y'all know Brother Muse. He's definitely a friend of the program over here. Big bro, you know what I'm saying? Uncle Muse, or however you want to call him. So he sent me something on text message. It was real dope. So I'm gonna share that right here. And I posted it in our community chat as well. So if you guys want to go revisit this, I posted it I believe yesterday. So yeah, let me bring that up. And it's on IG. And the guy had a very good, decent breakdown of the past election. Some things I agree with, some things, I'm kind of shaky with. But before we get to the interview, I thought it would be a good idea to give Brother Muse a shout out, and also to bring this clip up. I got to click on this here and go to Instagram. I don't want to do all the log in, but let's check this out. Hold on, I don't think I got it up here. So let me bring that down. Try this one more again. Share screen. Instagram.
The symbols, the iconography, and the language of a democracy, but internally, corporations and oligarchs have seized all of the levers of power. I looked at this election as a battle between corporatists and oligarchs. Corporatists, the Democrats, they want something very different from oligarchs. Corporatists want stability, they want decorum, the kind of decorum that Obama had or Bush had, or Bush was an idiot, but at least he had some, they could clean him up a little bit. And Biden, whatever his cognitive failings were, because they want stability, especially in terms of trade agreements, because they make investments overseas. Takes a while for a return on a profit. Corporatists want something different from oligarchs. Oligarchs are about chaos. They're about
Okay, so the first group of people he described were the people that were all about trade deals and all about investments and having order. That's who he said the Democrats were. They all about corporation and running things smoothly. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, really? That's what you say? Now, the next group of people he said are the oligarchs, which is the Republican Party. I think the man got it twisted. I think he got the parties flipped around, if you ask me. But in any event, it's interesting.
Steve Bannon said, deconstructing the administrative state. Why? Because it is a pure form of rentier capitalism. And by that, I mean that they make their money by setting up toll booths, Amazon, all of these digital media platforms. It's not about producing goods. And the more that the state is deconstructed, that's why they want to abolish the Department of Education, everything that we need.
Okay. Now, this would have let me know that he is definitely left-leaning, because he said everything that we need, including the dismantlement of the Department of Education. And let me elaborate on that. Trump did come in and dismantle the Department of Education on a federal level, which means that the funding that would come from the federal government, as far as the schools, like right now in Chicago, the school system is at a $734 million deficit. So all that does is redirects the funding on the federal level to the state and local level, so they could regulate the funding better. They know what their school district needs. So why would the federal government have to then come in and distribute the funds to the state? I mean, you got state and local government that can handle that. So it's not that he took away anything. He just shifted the responsibility where it rightfully belongs. So that was when he said that. So you got to read between the lines when people that be real, they be real slick. Like they real quick on the draw what they say. But if you break down what they said, he said the oligarchs, which I'm assuming the Republican Party, Trump and them, and they came in and dismantled the Department of Education. No, what they did was redirected the responsibility of distributing the funds for the grammar schools and the high schools on a state level. So let's continue.
As a civil society becomes privatized. And you see it in, I wrote a book called America, the Farewell Tour. It begins in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where everything, the sewer system's privatized, the parking authority is privatized, the electricity is privatized. And of course, they've jacked up the rates. And the services are not very good. And they want to privatize the post office so we can have a dysfunctional post office like the UK, which is privatized. And so that's what oligarchs want. And the oligarchs have won.
So see, the oligarchs have won. So he's saying Trump and them are the oligarchs, the ones that he's describing as that are chaotic. You know what I'm saying? And full of destruction. But the Democrats are the one that are the ones that are about order and putting everything in its proper place. I gotta beg to differ on that.
They won. And but that's what this battle was about in terms of if we strip away its the kind of trivia or the cultural differences between the two parties, that at its core was what it's about. And so we have, as you point out, we have now an oligarchic system. But as Aristotle wrote, once you create an oligarchic system with those kinds of inequities, then your only two choices are tyranny or revolution.
Wow. So he said the only thing at this point is tyranny and revolution, because Trump and the Republican Party have won the election, it's the only thing that you could have at this point is a revolution or tyranny. But I thought that would be a pretty good precursor to the actual interview that we're going to react to today. And because contrary to popular belief, or at least contrary to what that very articulate, I could tell very intelligent gentleman had to say, I think that Trump is bringing order. If he's an oligarch, I think he's the one that's actually bringing order back to the country and actually the world. You know what I'm saying? I think that he's the one that's actually putting some type of order back in place. You know, on a grand scale, the United States is being looked at as a world power once again. So without further ado, let's bring up the interview so we get an update. Now, Trump been in office about 6-7 months now. So let's get some updates. We got a little time into this. I mean, it's still early into this election, but we got a little time here now. You know what I'm saying? To kind of reflect on. You know, we at least 6 months or better in. So we need to hear from the president, from his own words, because you got a lot of people out here saying, man, Trump doing good. They got a lot of people say he's doing bad. I think for me, you know, as far as the things that I ran on, which was the economy and, you know, things of that nature, I think that, you know, Trump doing pretty good. It's just too early to really, you know, say. You know, you got to give the economy, the stuff that he's implementing now, you got to give the economy time to feel the full effect of it, which probably would not be until another year from now. You know, I think we still in Joe Biden's economy, and Trump did say that it's gonna pinch a little bit in the beginning because he got to come in and flip everything on his head to get it back on track. You know, because it's all out of whack. But yeah, man, I'm gonna shut up and let this go ahead and play, and then I'll step in with my commentary to react.
And now to the guests that we've been talking about all morning. President Donald Trump. Mr. President, welcome. Thanks for calling in. Wish you could be here in person, but we'll do this.
Good morning, Joe.
We've been talking about the BLS and the employment numbers all morning long. Sometimes I know you get a chance to tune in. I want to bring up a chart. I hope you can see it, or else I'll describe it to you. This is the response rate over the last 10, 12 years for the BLS, the household survey. It's dropped from 90% or so on time down to 60 and sometimes even lower. It's arguably the most important number we get about the economy. Yesterday, we had Wharton Professor Jeremy Siegel on. Just bear with me, Mr. President, and listen to this. I know you're familiar with Wharton, but unsolicited, this is what Jeremy Siegel said yesterday about the numbers.
I'm not going to let the BLS off the hook. I mean, you know, you talk about how to fix it. You know, make these questionnaires mandatory and give them a time limit to fill it out. You know, I mean, I think the response rate's down to 60%. I mean, that's unacceptable for the most important statistic that we have. It's almost like we're sending them out, you know, fill it out when you can. We know you like to go to the beach in the summer, so it might be a little bit late. You know, this is just not acceptable today.
So, all right, right quick, you know what I'm saying? Like I said before, this is a liberal leftist platform, so they're very critical of Donald Trump. And I've been going back and forth with people about this. On one end, people are reciting numbers that show that Trump is doing horrible. And then on another end, you go to Google, and then they say Trump is doing astronomical. So it depends on where you get you got to always consider the source of where you get your information from. Remember, these people have lied and manipulated and did everything in their power to discredit this man. So why wouldn't they falsify numbers? You know? And so I've come to see to realize that anytime that Trump say this is what it is, 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. So I'm leaning more towards what the president says and the people that, you know, he's rotating with, because, you know, you could get people that just want to be disagreeable for the sake of being disagreeable. They would rather see this man failing at his job, even if it means the country is failing. You know what I'm saying? Just to prove this man wrong. So keep all that in mind. Be careful where you get your information, and, you know, right or wrong, just be careful where you get your information from.
We need it. That response rate has to go up. And when you make the biggest mistake in 50 years, why? Why wasn't there an explanation?
This company is going viral for its new process that gives you permanent teeth in just 24 hours. If you're missing 5 or more,
it's 258,000 less in 2 months. That was the biggest revision since 1968, Mr. President. So we're in the internet age. We still can't get any instant data. We're still using snail mail to get the responses back. It is the government, after all. Antiquated, no doubt, and certainly suboptimal, but rigged. Where do you get the notion that it's rigged, or do you have any evidence there?
It is antiquated, but it's also very political. And, you know, I had an election recently where I did very well, won every swing state, won the popular vote, won everything, all right? Won all the counties. It's, I think 87% of the counties were Republican up. That's never happened before. And yet I had to go through hell. And just days before the election, they put out numbers that it was like the country was on fire. It was doing so well. And then they did a revision about 2 weeks later, and the revision was down by almost 900,000 jobs. You remember that? And I said, man, I said, what would have happened? What would have happened if I lost? Think of it. I would have said, they gave phony numbers, and then they revised them a week and a half later.
Those were benchmark numbers, though, Mr. President. That happens. They do that. They do that twice a year. And it reconciles the monthly figures with like the overall numbers, and it was a big number. And obviously,
the numbers were rigged. The numbers were rigged. Biden wasn't doing well. He was doing.
See, you notice on these leftist channels, you know what I'm saying? They ask him a question. When he get to breaking down the answer, they always interject. This is what I mean by him going into the lion's den and being very prepared, and even having to bogart his point at most times, because, mind you, this man got an earpiece that's interviewing Trump, and they telling him like, "Oh no, get out of there." You will notice when the earpiece, when they telling him to deflect or get, oh no, he going too deep into something else. They don't want that man to look good, you know what I'm saying, on no terms. So they are designed. But Trump in the lion's den is going to hold it down. Watch what I tell you.
Doing poorly. They announced these phenomenal numbers 2 days before the election, and a little bit before that, always these great numbers. And you knew it wasn't doing well. You knew prices were through the roof and inflation was terrible. The whole thing was bad. But think of it. Then they did the biggest revision, I think, in history, of almost 900,000 jobs. And it turned out to be more than that, because later on they did another revision. And so they gave phony numbers in order to win the election. After I won the election, I said too big to rig. But after I won the election, then they announced a downward number, in other words, to bring them back to reality. And I said, wow, supposing I would have lost, I would have blamed that. And people would have said I was a conspiracy theorist. You know, it's crazy.
Elaine Chao was on yesterday, and I know, you know, she was, I think she was labor secretary for 8 years under Bush II, and she was your transportation secretary as well. And she said, you know, the commissioner doesn't really even get involved with the actual minutia of putting all these things together. And there's no way that it could have been, that she could have chosen to rig these numbers to make them look bad. And these are statistical changes based on this antiquated system, and it's just a a big leap to go to rigged. And then it also, Mr. President, it makes anyone you pick is going to be, critics are going to say, hey, he's picking a guy that's going to give him the, or a gal that's giving him the numbers.
Yeah, so Trump recently, for people that, just to add some context, it was a lady that was reporting the numbers, and Trump ended up firing that lady because he said the numbers were false, you know. And now that's given like he said, like so if you hire somebody else, they just gonna get the numbers that you want to give because the numbers weren't looking too favorable on Trump's, you know, just to be objective, the numbers weren't looking too favorable in Trump's favor right about now, as far as inflation and things like that the lady was reporting. But Trump was like, well, shoot, she was sitting up here reporting about 900,000 things, jobs that wasn't even available, making it look that way. You know what I'm saying? So she was off by like 80%. Her reporting was off, and this is not the first time that she did that. So he gonna break his argument down that she was basically incompetent, or maybe even was a mold that was set in place to sabotage. You know what I'm saying? And if you go back to Trump's first presidency, he had a gang of moles. I had to go back and revisit that 4 years in his cabinet. You know what I'm saying? Now he got a more solid team, so it's easier to spot out the moles and the people that's there to sabotage, you know?
That he wants. So it undermines confidence in the system to some extent. You had, according to many people, all the rights in the world to try to replace a commissioner when hasn't gotten any better. But that is maybe a bridge too far, according to most people.
Well, I think when somebody says the commissioner is not involved, I don't want to get into any arguments with anybody. Why should I? She's a very nice woman.
Exactly.
But when they say that that nobody was involved, that it wasn't political, give me a break. Look, before the election, I had this massive outflow of beauty for Biden. I mean, he didn't know he was alive. And for Biden, the economy was roaring. It was a beautiful thing. And I said, there's no way this is happening. It's going the opposite direction. And 2 weeks later, they said I was right. But even if you look at the original, the ones from the other day, the numbers were very timid. And then they announced something that made them even more timid on top of it. On sort of a reporting day, I don't know why, it just seemed a little bit more important than most times when they announced these numbers.
We talked earlier that the unemployment rate is still low. It's 4.2%.
It's fine. I'm not saying earth-shattering. No, I will say this. The numbers before the election were earth-shattering. I'm not saying these were earth-shattering, but then they announced a couple of 100,000 to make it look a little bit worse from, months before. I said, where did those numbers come from? So
for as much as you want,
it's a highly political situation. It's totally rigged. Smart people know.
It's definitely political. And once again, like Trump said, it's one of them things where you got to be careful where you get your numbers from. And if that lady is doing anything nefarious to falsify information, Trump know midterms is right around the corner. So it's imperative that the numbers reflect truthfully. Because it's easy. You know how people take these polls, or who do you like? Who do you don't like? Or whatever. And depending on who giving the poll information, is could taint the jury base for the midterms. Midterms is next year in 2026, and they trying to keep the House and the Senate. So Trump ain't gonna play no games. He gonna fire you if you ain't on the ball. But these people is playing serious games with trying to make this man administration look like they not doing their job, and people just run with that narrative when I believe Trump got the real numbers and he ain't gonna lie about it.
Know it. People with common sense know it. And a lot of people to keep their head under the covers. And
let's move on to this. Which number do you believe at this point? Because if you noticed, suddenly the chances of what you've wanted for months and argued for months, the chances of a rate cut soared because of these numbers. Do you not believe the current numbers because they're playing right into what you want the Fed and Jay Powell to do. They're not horrible, as you said, but perhaps with the tariffs, some businesses delayed some spending. Some consumers may have been less certain about the future. So maybe we're seeing a slight slowdown in labor, but you're going to get exactly what you want based on these numbers. Which ones do you believe? Do you not believe the revised numbers either?
It's not what I want. I don't want that. I wanted it a year ago. I wanted it a long time ago. Jay Powell is highly political, and I think, I call him too late. Jerome, too late. Powell, he's too late. He's too late always. He always has been, except when it came to lowering interest rates before the election, he did. He worked that out.
Who would you replace him with? I know you watch the show occasionally, and we had an extended interview with one of the prospective replacements, Kevin Warsh. Were you watching that day, or? I was. He's very good. He's very good. He's very good. Sometimes they're all very good until you put them in there, and then they don't do so good. But a lot of them, I think he's a very good guy. I think I say Kevin and Kevin. Both Kevins are very good. And there are other people that are very good too. But Kevin's
a lot of
times, I don't know if that's good.
A lot of times they're very good. Like this character that we have in there now, Jerome Too Late Bell. He was very good. He said, "Sir, I'll keep interest rates so low. I'm a low interest rate person, sir." You could hardly hear him talking over the desk.
Is Warsh
somebody that worked for me was a big fan of his. Not a fan of his. He hardly knew him, but he wanted him so badly. I did somebody a favor. I put him in there. No, he's too late. He's too late. That name will stick to him.
Can you handicap it at all? Who you're, or you won't know? When will you know? And when will you announce it?
Two Kevins are doing well, and I have two other people that are doing well. Look, it's in the end there are numerous people that are qualified. Everyone on your phone right now, in terms of at your beautiful studio, would be very qualified, in my opinion. You guys are better than most of the people that do it for a living. But I watched a lot, actually. No, I think that it'll be one of four people.
Are the other two names?
I'm going to make the decision soon. And don't forget, we have somebody that left early, which was a pleasant surprise. We have a woman that left early. She announced 2 days ago that she's leaving, and I'm going to be announcing that very shortly, too. That will be, most likely it'll be for the 4 months, for the short period of time. But a lot of people say that when you do that, why don't you just pick the person who's going to head up the Fed? That's a possibility, too.
President Trump, you said there are four names. There are two other names that have been mentioned in the press. One is Governor Waller. The other is the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Are those the four that you're considering?
Well, I love Scott, but he wants to stay where he is. I'll take him off because I asked him just last night, is this something you want? Nope, I want to stay where I am. He actually said, I want to work with you. It's such an honor. I said, that's very nice. I appreciate that. But no, Scott wants to do what he's doing. He's doing a great job, and he wants to do what he's doing. So I just take him off. He does not want it. He likes being Treasury Secretary. He's doing a really good job. We made the greatest trade deals in the history of our country. We had to because we were being ripped off by the world. It's not like we had a choice. If we would have gotten these trade deals, if you would have had a normal president that would have just continued to allow every country in the world to rip you off, we would not have a country anymore. Your show would be off the air. There'd be nothing to look at. It would be a disaster.
Hey, and I got to agree with Trump right there, man. Like, other nations have took so much advantage of this country in the last 4 years. I mean, when Trump got out of office back in 2020, inflation was at 2% or something like that. If that, he handed over to Biden a thriving economy, and to see in 4 years how this economy was destroyed. And that's something we cannot forget, how it was a year or two ago in this country, and for Trump to only be 6 months in and have all these different investments. I mean, $600 billion coming from Japan, $500 billion coming from Saudi Arabia. Like, we being respected again as a thriving economy, you know, where other nations want to invest into our economy because they know it's on and cracking now. Once again, it's on. So, you know, yeah, Biden, Sleepy Joe. We don't know who was running this country because that man he wasn't in his right mind. That was elder abuse that had him running around the planet like that, like he was really doing something when he was being propped up like Weekend at Bernie's. That man should have been somewhere eating some Jell-O, watching his grandchildren play in the park, man, or run around the backyard.
We were in such bad shape when I took over. Eggs had tripled in price. More than that. Everything was up and prices are down, and it bugged me. I looked at CNN the other night, which is a failing deal. It's got no ratings, and I'm probably the only guy watching. And I watched these guys talking about, well, with Trump, prices are up. No, prices are down since I came in. Down. All prices just about, except for the price of stock. The price of stock is way up, okay? But prices are down. And if you look at energy, I'll give you an example. Joe, look at energy.
Some of them, but yeah.
Energy is way down. Energy is down to $2.20 a barrel, a gallon now for a car.
Now, and that's something that people need to take note of. On a federal level, prices are down. Now, if your gas prices and your grocery prices are still too high, a lot of that is because of your state tax, more than likely. Whatever tax they got it on the state level, because see, you get taxed on the federal and the state level. If you go off of what Trump did, he brought everything down on the federal level. But they still, the different states are taxing on, you know, us as well. So the price of oil has went down dramatically. But if your gas prices are too high, or if your grocery prices are too high, then you might need to look at your state and local government that adding that additional taxes. Federally, Trump is bringing stuff down. In certain states that are in compliance with the federal government, they are experiencing a lot of the reduction. Now, we're not where we want to be, but we're getting there. It's going in the right direction. And once again, this is 6 to 7 months into his second term. So we still under Joe Biden's economy. You know what I'm saying? We not going to see the effects of the stuff that Donald Trump is implementing at least until a year from now, you know, for it to take full effect once again.
It's down to a level. You're down, I guess, around $65 a barrel, but it's going down. There's tremendous energy. And if you notice, OPEC and OPEC Plus, they're drilling more. They want to drill more because I think they want me happy. Because if energy goes down low enough, Putin's going to stop killing people. That'll be nice, even though they're his own people that are dying, him and Ukraine. But Putin will stop killing people if you get energy down another $10 a barrel. He's going to have no choice because his economy stinks.
Mr. President, it's Andrew here. It's great to speak with you.
Good.
I just wanted to ask you about, you mentioned tariffs, and on Sunday, you talked again about this idea of dividends for middle and lower income folks that might come off of the tariffs, meaning the revenue that's coming in from the tariffs. And I wanted you to maybe explain how that might work in practice and how you're thinking about that and the trade-offs between paying down the debt, which I thought was something you had been talking a lot about, versus sending checks out, because obviously that creates its own debt for us.
So we're taking in trillions of dollars, Andrew. If you look at Japan, we're taking in $550 billion. And that's like a signing bonus that a baseball player would get. He would get slightly less no matter how good he is, right? But they give a signing bonus of $1 million or $2 million or $20 million or whatever the hell they give today. It's so out of control. But a signing bonus. So I got a signing bonus from Japan of $550 billion. That's our money. It's our money to invest as we like. European Union, $650 billion. Think of it. And they're going to buy $750 billion worth of our energy. And they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And by the way, they're going to open up their countries, which they've never done. Japan has never. If you did business in Japan, they would arrest you. You're not allowed to do any business. And now Japan has totally opened up their country.
That's major. Now y'all got to take note of that. What he's saying. Japan, they don't shop with people like that. They sell. They don't buy. That's huge for a country like Japan to fork over that kind of money. And like he said, this ain't no replay. This is another false narrative that we getting this money and we got to pay it back. No, we don't. That's money that they invested. It's a sign-on bonus because they rocks with Trump. They know he a business tycoon. So yeah, we need a president that got the connection with these other nations to go ahead and invest back into our economy. Our economy has been depleted due to other countries taking advantage of us because we didn't have a strong president for the last 4 years. So on trade, we've been getting abused. We've been subjugated to illegal immigration, money being forked over for people that don't even belong in this country. So we got other nations that rock with Trump and say, hey, man, this is an investment for you. Get your country back on your feet. Because see, when America do good, the rest of the planet does good. We the plug. That's what a lot of people don't understand. And the reason we are the plug is every nation sends their goods here. We buy more than any other nation in the world of other people's goods. So, yeah, they want to be in good graces with us. Because we spend money like it ain't nothing with everybody. Keep that in mind.
They're even taking our rice, which is something that nobody said was possible. But more importantly, that
hold on, Japan taking our rice? What? Come on, man, that's crazy.
Taking our cars. They're taking the very beautiful Ford 150, which does very well, and I'm sure will do very well there. And other things that do very well here will also do well there. You'd be surprised at some of the great things we make. But Japan has opened up. All of these, Indonesia's opened up their country. South Korea has opened up their country. But not only opened up, and that's going to be huge business. When you open up South Korea, it's a closed country. And now all of a sudden we're allowed to sell cars into South Korea and trucks and SUVs. I mean, we're really opening it up. Vietnam is opening up their country. You know, these are all closed countries, but the EU was closed. They wouldn't take our agriculture. I said to, let me just say a prime minister, a very nice prime minister, a couple of years ago, I said, how many cars are you taking a year? Let me guess, is it one or two? She said, no, we don't take any of your cars. I said, that's right. That's not nice. I said, that's not right. That's not a nice thing, Angela. But they took none of them, and now they take all our cars, all our trucks. Everything is open, 100%. In addition, the EU is going to pay us $650 billion. We're going to round it off, actually, because of certain things, to $600 billion. And think of it. They're going to put up $750 billion. We're a rich country again. Now, these are just deals that I'm announcing. These are the biggest ones because EU is, essentially Europe. We made great deals with all of the countries, and they're being fair about it. One other thing, I mean, for your listeners, that perhaps
now you see what I'm saying. He over here cooking, breaking it down. And they must have got the call to go ahead and cut them off. This is information that you need to know. You know what I'm saying? But I guess he's doing too much right now. Too much. They dropping numbers on him now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they like, man, cut them off. Get in there and cut them off.
Perhaps are a little bit less wealthy than some of your listeners. I'm doing something that nobody's ever done before. As you know, for 30 years, Europe has had drug prices that are, in many cases, 1/10 the cost of drugs in here. Same manufacturing plants, same everything. 1/10. I've invoked favored nations. Now, there is no favored nations clause. I've just said there is, okay, because we're not going to pay 10 times more per pill than they pay in Europe. Then that's going to have a tremendous impact on the price of medicine.
Mr. President, what kind of teeth, though, are in those investments? What kind of teeth are in those investments, meaning that would force the EU to make those investments? If they don't make those investments, what happens on the other side?
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope tech from Wix.
Well, then they pay tariffs of 35%. No, they brought down their tariffs. So they paid $600 billion. And because of that, I reduced their tariffs from 30% down to 15%. And a couple of countries came, how come EU is paying less than us? And I said, well, because they gave me $600 billion.
That's a good reason. Why they paying less? Because they gave me $650 billion, man. That's why they paying less. They gave to see the art of the deal, man. Like I said, this man know what he doing, man. Let him cook. But see, a lot of these, and this one of the media platforms that'll tell you that this man is not, he don't know what he doing. But see, he don't have no problem going in there and chopping it up with him and breaking it down by himself. They cutting him off, trying to get in there, but see, he's spitting game so fast at them. They want to listen and they want to cut him off at the same time. They don't know what to do. He lighting them up with facts.
And that's a gift. That's not like, a loan, by the way. That's not a loan that, 3 years comes up, we have to pay it back. There's nothing to pay back.
Thank you. I'm glad he debunked that. This ain't no loan for, people coming at me talking about, oh, well, we got to pay. No, we don't, bro. People don't know what they talking about. This ain't no loan. This is a investment, and it ain't nothing to pay back. They trying to get in our good graces. We ain't finna be in no debt. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, we the United States of America. What you mean?
They gave us $600 billion that we can invest in anything we want.
The deal that you
and nobody knows it, Becky. Nobody knows it because they don't know.
No, that we have been trying to figure out the details on that, Mr. President. So
well, there are no details.
Clarity on that.
Details are $600 billion to invest in anything I want. Anything. Okay. I can do anything I want with it.
He said, "Hey, I can do anything I want with it. How about that?"
And the purpose was they've been, ripping us for so many years that it's time that they pay up, and they have to pay up. We couldn't afford to have the deficits. Look, I did something with Switzerland the other day. I spoke to their prime minister. The woman was nice, but she didn't want to listen. And they paid essentially no tariffs. And I said, we have a $41 billion deficit with you, madam. I didn't know her. I said, we have a $41 billion deficit. And you want to pay 1% tariffs. You wanted 1%. I said, you're not going to pay 1%. We lose, because I view deficit as loss. You have some people, by the way, I think
pharmaceuticals are a big issue with Switzerland. I think
well, I'll go into pharmaceuticals. Yeah. They make a fortune with pharmaceuticals, and they make our pharmaceuticals in China and Ireland and everything else. And within the next week or so, we're going to be announcing tariffs on specifically. This is this is a separate class than the 15% tariffs on sort of everything. These are excluded classes, I call them. I like to call them excluded, like steel, aluminum, etc.
Right, the
well,
232.
We're going to be announcing on semiconductors and chips, which is a separate category, because we want them made in the United States. And by the way, they're being made in the United States. We have the biggest in the world, as you know, from Taiwan is coming over and spending $300 billion in Arizona, building the biggest plant in the world for chips and semiconductors. But on pharmaceuticals, we'll be putting a initially small tariff on pharmaceuticals, but in 1 year, President 1.5 years maximum, it's going to go to 150%, and then it's going to go to 250%, because we want pharmaceuticals made in our country. And that's not the CHIPS Act like Biden did, because he didn't know what he was doing, where they gave billions of dollars to companies that had more money than they knew what to do with.
President Trump, can I ask you about something that you're doing that's opposite of the Biden administration, too? And that's the latest deal that you've announced. The latest deal, though, that you're announcing with India. You're upset with the trade deal there, especially because they're buying Russian oil. The Biden administration sanctioned Russian oil, but then they kind of winked and nodded and appreciated that India and China were buying some of that oil because they were worried it would raise oil prices and thereby prices at the pump. To you, is it more important to shut down the Russians on this? to worry about oil prices?
I'm not worried about prices because we're drilling at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And what Biden did is he stopped my drilling. And then prices, if you remember that first couple of months, prices went through the roof. And he immediately said, let's go back to what Trump was doing. Let's go back to it. But by that time, they had blown it, and the energy prices were so high. And that's what caused that, and his crazy spending is what caused, by the way, the largest inflation in the history of our country was during the Biden administration. Not 48 years. You know, they like to say 48 years. It was the largest in the history of our country, the inflation that we had during Biden, because the man obviously didn't know what he was doing. But with India, what people don't like to say about India, they're the highest tariff nation. They have the highest tariff of anybody. We do very, very little business with India because their tariffs are so high. So India has not been a good trading partner because they do a lot of business with us, but we don't do business with them. So we settled on 25%, but I think I'm going to raise that very substantially over the next 24 hours because they're buying Russian oil. They're fueling the war machine. And if they're going to do that, then I'm not going to be happy.
There are a lot of deals signed. And I don't know, I thought India was imminent. I'm not sure what the sticking point is there, Mr. President. But let's just, since we don't have all day, we got to talk China.
Well, the sticking point with India is that tariffs are too high. Now, I will say this. But India went from the highest tariffs ever. They will give us 0 tariffs. And they're going to let China, us go in. But that's not good enough because
bam. Trump ain't going, man. You heard what he said. That's not good enough. They will give us 0 tariffs. You know what I'm saying? And you see how they try to deflect and go to the next. Oh, no, let's talk about it. He ain't ducking no smoke. 6-7 months in, still on the ball, still, very much enthusiastic about the business deals that's going on across the planet. I mean, foreign exchange, foreign policy had destroyed the intermodal trucking industry during the Biden-Harris administration. That's the industry I was in because the trade, I mean, it directly affected my career. You know what I'm saying? And now, if you look at the numbers, the intermodal and trucking industries are starting to surge back. And in a minute, we ain't even gonna need to be overseas. I mean, we're gonna be doing so much. I mean, all these plants that's being built, automotive tech plants, we're gonna need more construction workers to build up these plants. We're gonna need truckers to move these supplies right here on American soil. It's gonna be a lot of movement going on in the next 4 years. With all these, you think that man getting all these hundreds of billions of dollars from all these countries just to sit on it? No, sir. No, sir. It's going down, boy, in the biggest way, in the most, enormous way.
Because of what they're doing with oil. Not good.
It looked like you were going to have a meeting and people were talking about it with President Xi. And then you went out of your way to kind of say other people are saying, I think you even called it fake news or something. It looked like you were indicating that you were unhappy or that talks had broken down. And we've had a couple of frameworks or some positive moves. In China, you've had a lot of success with other countries. China is a big deal and a big, not quite the elephant in the room, but certainly an important trading partner. Where does that stand? Will there be a meeting between you and President Xi? Anything planned at this point? What's the sticking point now, and how optimistic are you that we get a comprehensive
deal? Well, I can have a meeting. We have a very good relationship, but I didn't call for the meeting. He called for the meeting. So the fake news announced Donald Trump wants a meeting with China. No, I didn't want it. No, he asked for a meeting, and I'll end up having a meeting before the end of the year, most likely, if we make a deal. If we don't make a deal, I'm not going to have a meeting. I mean,
Hey, man, he said, man, I ain't trying to meet with dude unless he's trying to make a deal, man. I love it. See, that's part of the false narratives. See, a lot of this stuff is like, between these leaders and other nations, it's kind of like wrestling, right? People say one thing, the media run with it, and it's actually a diversionary tactic. You know what I'm saying? President Xi, tell one news reporter one thing and they run with it, you know. Oh, and then they report on it and they add they spin to it, and then, you know, they talk to Trump about it, and it's a whole nother story. But see, if you notice the news reporter that's asking these questions, CNBC, they don't know what to do. I mean, Trump, they hitting Trump with Trump coming at him with so many different directions, they not even knowing how to respond. He eating them alive, man.
You know, what's the purpose of meeting if we're not going to make a deal? But we're getting very close to a deal. We're getting along with China very well. I will tell you, you know, you had a point when I had 145% tariffs on. I put in for fentanyl. I actually said to people, where are we now with China, by the way? Because I kept adding more and more. They said, sir, you're up to 145%. I said, you got to be kidding. So I sort of had to bring it down a little bit. But when it was up to 145%, meaning we were doing zero business with China, China was collapsing. I don't know if you know that. You haven't reported it if you do. But China was collapsing. China is very reliant on the United States. My relationship with him is very good. I think we'll make a good deal. It's not imperative, but I think we're going to make a good deal. But no, they had a thing that Donald Trump really wanted to go there. No, I don't. It's a 19-hour flight. It's a long flight. But at some point in the not too distant future, I will. And just to end this conversation in China, I have a very good relationship with President Xi. Always had, other than the COVID moment where I was very angry with him and essentially didn't want to talk to him, frankly, because, you know, it did come out of Wuhan, in all fairness, which I was saying from the day one. I was saying I knew exactly where it came from. But that did interfere with the relationship. But no, I've had a great relationship with President Xi. We respect him a lot. They respect us a lot. They didn't respect Biden. They thought he was a numbskull. They couldn't believe he was the president of the United States, and neither can anyone else let that happen.
Man.
Everybody be asking me, man, does the Bluetooth actually work?
Bro, you get a month for free.
It's free.
Mr. President, a different topic. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that you're prepping an order that they say would punish banks that discriminate against conservatives, including potentially Bank of America. I'm going to be actually talking to Brian Moynihan here later today. Can you tell us about that executive order? What's in that? And what do you think the banks have done?
Well, they did discriminate. I had J.P. Morgan Chase. I had hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. I could see if they want to, if they want to do something bad because you don't have any money and you defaulted and you're this.
Okay, now this is going to get real interesting right here. And after he answers this question, well, I'm going to give you a breakdown of what's going on. After Trump got out the office back in 2020, after his first presidency, they were so salty at Donald Trump that the banks, when he was he the former president now, I don't know if it was the Obama administration or Joe Biden administration, had the banks basically blackball him, where he had to take all his money out. This man a billionaire, and then he was going to other banks. They kind of blackballed him and his family, the whole Trump family, and people that he was close to. They wouldn't do business with him. So they was like, hey, man, we got to have you get up out of here with your money. Man, I got billions of dollars. I mean, I got loans. That I pay in full and, build my whatever. So he got to a point where he had to go to a whole bunch of smaller banks, put a few million here, a few million there. Like, man, he had accounts all over the place because he had been blackballed by the banking industry. This is crazy. He gonna break it down. And once he break this down, we probably gonna end this because I'm coming up on an hour. And if y'all want to do a part 2 to this interview, let me know and we can make that happen. I'll get the timestamp and we can continue on the part 2 side. But check this craziness out.
They took people out, but I'll give you me as an example. I had hundreds of millions. I had many, many accounts loaded up with cash. I was loaded up with cash, and they told me, I'm sorry, sir, we can't have you. You have 20 days to get out. I said, you got to be kidding. I've been with you for 35, 40 years. They said, and I mean, I had all this. I didn't know what to do with it. And I went to, and you could ask him, maybe he's not going to admit it. So I said, I was informed by my people that we have to get out of Chase Manhattan. That's Jamie and JP Morgan Chase. So I said, I can't believe it. Well, I was never in this situation before. I've never had anything like it. And it's not like, gee, you defaulted on a loan. Geez, if I could understand that, that's different. But there's no default. I mean, there's nothing but cash. I have a really great company. And then what happens is I call up Bank of America routinely because when I was president, this was after I got out, by the way, I call up Bank of America routinely. And I speak to him and I speak to a couple of people and they have zero interest. Brian was kissing my ass when I was president.
Now, mind you, the banks that he just named, JP Morgan and Bank of America, that's a bone that people should be able to go follow the money, who they connected to. Are they back behind the Democratic Party? This is a former president that's a billionaire that they don't want to do business with. Ain't like he defaulted on no loans. The money legit. So why would you not want to do business with a former president? Where he got to come get billions of dollars out the bank in 20 days. Like, how do you do that? I'm just saying, bro, this is some weird activity, bro.
And when I called him after I was president to deposit $1 billion plus and a lot of other things, more importantly, to open accounts, which banks always like. They like accounts because they get interest free, the overnights and things, there are a lot of reasons for it, but they like accounts. I had hundreds of accounts. And he said, we can't do it. No, we can't do it. So I went to another one. I ended up going to small banks all over the place. I mean, I was putting 10 million here, 10 million there, did 5 million, 10 million, 12 million. I have them all over the place, the craziest thing. And it's lucky I even had them. They were doing me a favor. And that's because the banks discriminated against me very badly. And I was very good to the banks. I had the greatest economy in the history of our country when I was president. And by the way, our economy now will blow that away. And you see it happening. But our economy now, because we're a rich country again, because of our trade deals, we've become a rich country again. But no, they totally discriminate against, I think me maybe even more, but they discriminated against many conservatives. I told that story and sitting around tables with other people that were conservative or Trump supporters. I think the word might be Trump supporters more than conservative. And I believe what they did is they went to the regulators. Banks are not afraid of anything but a regulator. They're regulators and their wives. They're more afraid of their wives than the regulators. But the group they're really afraid of is bank regulators. And I believe that Biden or Kamala, and I don't think they're smart enough to do it, but the people that are surrounding the beautiful Resolute desk, the
deep state, not Biden or Kamala. He said, I don't think they too smart to do what they did, but the people that pay Kamala and Biden, the unlisted bureaucrats that pay these politicians, they not on record, but they behind the scenes pulling the strings. When they say, man, the deep state, think about everything they did with this man. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They washed and rinsed them through the judicial system. Now we find out that they discriminated against him and his supporters, that where they wouldn't even do business with him at JP Morgan Chase and BOA, Bank of America. And he had to go through a whole bunch of smaller banks on top of trying to assassinate this man. So you mean to tell me Some don't seem weird to you. I'm just saying.
High IQ people that are radical left. I believe they told the banking commission, the bankers, that the banking regulators, do everything you can to destroy Trump.
2025 IRS tax forgiveness now has open enrollment. It's easy to.
And that's what they did. And guess what? I'm president. How did that happen?
Yeah, Mr. President, you've
Okay. I think we could end that right there, man. I got the timestamp. It's basically 27 minutes in, so we're a little bit more than halfway into this interview. And, you know, I got to get up out of here, man. We had an hour, dog. This is good. I told y'all, man, this was going to be good. I told y'all this was going to be good, man. And you ain't want to miss this. My reaction to Trump's latest interview on CNBC. And we're basically doing an overview on Trump's presidency so far, 6-7 months into his presidency, from his own words in his latest interview, you know? And wow, how crazy is that we just learned that, right? About the banks discriminating against him. And I seen Donald Trump Jr. saying the same thing. He's like, man, I've been in real estate my whole adult life. And they stopped doing business with me. So you know what they did? Trump Jr. said they got off into crypto because the banks was discriminating them in the type of money they playing with. You know what I'm saying? They can't be they gonna have accounts everywhere. But how dirty is that, bro? But yeah, man, we got to get up out of here. This was a good one on a Friday. Hope y'all enjoy y'all weekend. You know what I'm saying? And let me know, man, if y'all want to do a part 2 to finish it up on that interview, and man, I'll be more than glad to make that happen. But what say you? It's your boy Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless. We love y'all. Until next time, we shall see you soon. Peace and blessings.